Good evening and welcome to the Torino Regional Park Master Plan update. It is August 24th at 6:04 p.m. Pardon our delay. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we appreciate everyone joining us tonight on our update for the Torino Regional Park Conceptual Master Plan. So tonight, we've got our presentation. Can we click over to the next slide?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. So tonight, I'm Kelly Boatwright. I'm Parks Administrator of Projects for the City of Port St. Lucie. With us tonight in our audience here in Chambers, we have Mike Kendrick, the Parks and Recreation Deputy Director, Brad Keene, Parks and Recreation Assistant Director, and Paul Graves, our Parks and Recreation Project Coordinator. Sorry, there's a lot of words in the titles there. We also have with us here on the dais with me is Mr. Jonathan Haig. I'm the project manager for Kimley Horn, one of the consultants who is helping us with the conceptual plan for the Torino Regional Park site. We also have here in the audience Kristen Alexa. Sorry, Kristen, I'm landscape architect. So sorry, I don't have the slides right in front of me, so I'm kind of reading off the screen over to the side. And then we have Nick Kuhn, who is the park planner, and he is virtually joining us tonight and will help provide this update. So tonight we're going to go over some of the data and the information that we've collected from our residents and some of the other folks in our community about what they would like to see brought to our community, our Torino Regional Park. And with that, we'll go over a few housekeeping. Your microphones will be muted throughout the duration of the presentation. We encourage you to type any questions you may have in the Q&A feature of the presentation, and we will certainly answer any questions you have. We'll also note any comments you might provide. And then for tonight's presentation or for any other information that you may like to check out on the Torino Regional Park planning process, you can click that QR code, and we update that landing page regularly with what's going on with the planning process. You can also reach that at www.cityofpsl.com/Torino Regional Park. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan and get started going through some of the data.
All right, thanks, Kelly. One last housekeeping item is our capital M's are acting funny on this presentation, so you may not be able to read everything as we intended. But moving on to the agenda, tonight we're going to discuss the project progress. Nick Kuhn on our team is going to discuss the public input review. The park programming and anticipated amenities. Nick and I are going to tag team that one. And then we're going to hand it over to Heath, the Public Works Director for the city, for the transportation projects update at the very end. So with our project progress, as we've kind of presented to the public in the past, we have a 4-step process that we're working through. We've made it through the data collection and site evaluation. We've made it through a good part of our public engagement, and we've got the results of that in this presentation. We are kind of in between the two, public engagement and concept development. We started a little bit of the concept development, but we're not quite ready to have that ready for the public. And our last stage would be the master plan itself, which will be targeted for completion by December of this year. So you can see on this chart here kind of where we are in that green bar on the lower right where it says public update August 24th. That's exactly where we are on the calendar. Just to refamiliarize everyone with the what encompasses the site, we have nearly 200 acres spread between 3 main parcels, Parcel A, Parcel C, and Parcel B. So you may hear us later on discuss the different parcels in particular, and we'll have this map handy for those slides when we get there. It includes a former police training site. There is a current lease with the remote-controlled club, and there's several existing utility infrastructure elements on the properties. So there's a little bit we're dealing with this one. So again, just to reiterate on the timeline of the overall project since its inception, in 2002 there was a parks improvement plan. It moved into an actual design, which was awarded back in 2007. The project was put on hold at that time. It was brought back after the master plan was developed in 2019. So in 2022, we started working on this as a firm, as Kimley Horn as a firm did. We're shooting for, again, the master plan completion by December of 2023 with anticipated design to start in 2024 and construction to start sometime in 2025. So as far as the public input data review, I'm going to hand it over to Nick.
Thank you. And I'll let you continue to drive, Jonathan. On this slide, we wanted to start the process first with really where we last left off, and that is with the citywide Parks and Recreation Master Plan. That was the last citywide effort to really document needs and priorities when it comes to Parks and Recreation. This is a starting step to really understand what all is potentially needed for the Torino Regional Park. And so what you see on the screen here is actually one of the statistically valid survey responses. And this was again collected from citywide responses. And what this chart shows is the number of households that have a need for a specific type of recreation facility. And the numbers that are next to each bar represents the number of households with a need that is 50% or less being met currently. So that means there's a majority need for this facility. And so you'll see in descending order here, really a lot of passive use type amenities and facilities here, starting off with walking and biking trails. Those really represent the highest figure, but you can see a long list here. But it's also very important to notice here that just because there might be a smaller set of households that have an identified need doesn't necessarily mean that, again, there's no need for these facilities. So that's one thing that really starts us in terms of understanding the community needs. The next slide, we have one of the end results from the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And what you'll see on this one is a map of the entire city. And at the very top, you'll see a clustering of some color symbols, and it's outlined by a yellow circle. That's where Torino Regional Park is. And so what you'll see here is the recommendation from the citywide master plan to really have a lot of facilities at Torino Regional Park. It really serves that northern area of the entire city. And so you'll see a couple of what those symbols represent, everything from community park to community center, athletic fields, as well as proposed regional sports complex. So the idea really from the city-wide master plan was that Torino is, again, going to serve that community-wide need. On the next slide, we have a diagram that illustrates the process that we started with Torino Regional Park. And it really mirrors the overall process that the citywide master plan did as well. And what this does is we use 3 different types of techniques to gauge the community's needs and priorities when it comes to parks and recreation. We utilize qualitative techniques, and these are public and stakeholder input opportunities, such as tonight. Observational techniques, such as evaluating the site itself. And finally, quantitative techniques, and these are more data-driven. And it's really where these 3 techniques overlap is where we start to have a consensus of what the park program needs are. And this gives us a good data-driven as well as an input from public in terms of what those needs are. On the next slide, we have, again, a little snapshot from the master plan itself. And this began as part of our analysis with the data-driven side. And this is a facility level of service. This is taking the number of facilities that are offered around the city and measuring that on a per capita basis and seeing that not only in the context of what we provide today as a city, but benchmarking that to national and state standards as well. And so this identified a number of needs in there, and they're highlighted in the orange column. So we have a lot of broad needs that Torino can potentially meet. On the next slide, starts to highlight some of the survey results. We conducted an online survey earlier this year for Torino Regional Park, and we had well over 1,000 responses and over 449 written comments were all collected as part of the survey. And so this is a great turnout. Almost 80% of all responses were residents of the city. So again, Torino may serve those beyond just the city as well. But more importantly, it represented respondents from every single neighborhood across the city, and 27% of respondents were from the adjacent Torino neighborhood. So we have a lot of reflection from those closest to the site as well, and representing multiple age groups. Now, just a brief kind of highlight of some of the results here is the pie chart in the top right. You'll see we asked the question of the preference, the type of activities respondents would like to see at Torino Regional Park, whether it be a balance of passive or active uses, or more passive or more active. And so you can see here the majority of folks responded, 52%, with a preference of balancing both passive and active uses. And then you can see another slight preference of passive uses with 27%. So we have a strong alignment of that need to really balance those uses. And this site is a rather large site and can most likely accommodate a lot of this balancing of those different types of activities. On the next slide, we have another question highlighted from the online survey. And this is a summary of the 20 most desired amenities. And so we allowed folks to select all the amenities from a list that they would like to see within Torino Regional Park, including write-in options. And so as many votes as you'd like amongst those lists provided. And really what you see here is one large standout at the top of the chart here. It's in descending order of the number of percentage of response that voted or selected that particular amenity. And you'll see restrooms stand out at 62% of all respondents said that was a desired element of Torino Regional Park. Then you'll start to see some other clustering again of different types of activities here, but still representing a broad range of both passive and active activities. But in the top 10, you'll see a slight majority of some of those passive uses, really exemplifying that picnic spaces, paved trails, unpaved trails, outdoor event spaces, those types of, and nature enjoyment, all really focused in those top areas. On the next slide, we honed this down a little bit more. This time we said, what are the most important amenities to have at Torino Regional Park? And we allowed respondents to select 4. And so this really applied or required respondents to prioritize which elements, which amenities would be most important to have. And so these represent, out of a total of 100%, the percentages you'll see next to each bar chart represent the total of that percentage for that amenity. So again, at the very top, we have restrooms. So 11% of all selections were made just for restrooms as being the most important amenity. But then again, you'll start to see some of the same patterns of the previous one in terms of desired. Splash pads, playgrounds, paved trails, unpaved trails round out the top 5. So again, you'll see some similarities there. And again, we wanted to highlight that the low importance ranking doesn't necessarily mean that there are no community needs for that individual amenity. So we're not necessarily just looking to add in the most popular items here. We're ultimately looking at what have connections with one another, complement each other, and also achieves the needs of the broad community as well. On the next slide, we wanted to summarize our community workshop input. So in January, we had a couple workshops. We had a virtual and then an in-person workshop. And so what you'll see here are some summaries from the in-person workshop. And this was a question, you'll see a couple charts here. One was, which activity does your household currently participate in? And which activities would you like to see at Torino Regional Park? And you'll see, again, we had a large turnout in terms of those that already participate in the green, and then those that would like to, those activities you'd like to have access in the orange on the right. And again, a lot of passive uses as well, but there's also a broad element here in terms of baseball fields that are currently being used, as well as beach volleyball and other activities that would be desired or wanted at the park as well. On the next slide, we had another question from the in-person community workshop, and this was, which opportunity do you feel is most important? We had a series of 8 different predetermined, predefined opportunities, and we also allow for some write-ins, but the selections that were made here, you can see, again, a majority, we're preferencing a preserve natural areas sort of approach to Torino Regional Park, with some educational opportunities. But that was also followed by providing spaces to socialize and picnic, as well as develop a community serving park with a balance of amenities. So those are, again, some of those broader approaches that were identified. On the next slide, we have a diagram, and this is certainly a very difficult one to read on the screen right now, but I'll walk through in just a couple of the highlights here. So all 3 parcels are represented for the Torino Regional Park, and this diagram represents the challenges and opportunities that we've been able to identify by evaluating the site. And some of the highlights that you'll see here are some orange shading that's across the sites, primarily the center parcel, what we call parcel A. You'll see some larger blocks of that orange shading. That represents some of the wetlands that are presently on site. And those are certainly areas that we want to be mindful in terms of potential future development, because there are mitigation requirements for that. And we want to make sure that, again, we are efficiently using public funding for this park. And there's ample space here to achieve a lot. So we want to avoid, if possible, those wetlands. We also have several existing utilities, as Jonathan mentioned earlier, across the site, primarily located along the canal that bisects parcel A. And we also have some areas that are outlined in green that really are conducive to potential development of park facilities and infrastructure. So athletic fields and potential parking could be located in some of those areas. We also have some restrictions on potential land uses here, with the northern area of parcel A, with a majority of that being really focused on passive uses. And that's really conducive to, again, the existing vegetation that's located in that site today. So that's a very broad summary of those opportunities and constraints. The last chart I wanted to hit here is on the next slide. And that's really where we pull together all this information. So this synthesizes hundreds of pages of data from the surveys, as well as the public input opportunities. Really, all 3 of those major techniques are represented here. And so what you'll see on this chart is, on the very top are the different techniques that were really utilized in this process and from the prior citywide master plan to identify needs and priorities. And then what you'll see listed on the left side of the chart, or the matrix, are the different amenity types. And they're in descending order in terms of the identified need from the community. And so where you see the dark blue, it'll say high need, medium, or the sort of cyan color is the medium need, and green represents a lower need, but it was still identified in that technique as a need. And so where those really bubble to the top, that allows us to have some consensus on what are the broadest needs, what are the most important amenities. And so you'll see a list here of approximately 20 different amenity types, and it's highlighted first by paved trails, number 1 across almost all of the techniques really identified as a high need, followed by unpaved trails, playgrounds, picnic shelters, and multi-purpose fields rounding out the top 5. So with that, we want to then bridge into the next section here and talk a little bit about programming and the anticipated amenities, which really builds on this prior information. So for parcels A and C, and we have our reference map on the right here, you'll see outlined where parcel A is. It's the larger of the 3 parcels, and parcel C, located to the east side, close to the turnpike and in between Torino. And these sites represent some of the largest acreage, but they also do have some challenges to the sites, which we've factored into what kind of space might be available for development. But these represent the opportunities to really achieve the most in terms of the program or amenities for the park site. So you'll see in the green box the list, and this is again in descending order based off the previous section of information of what those programs could anticipate to be. And so we'll again start with paved multi-use trails and boardwalks, really an opportunity to again provide connectivity throughout the sites, connect these three parcels, but also really provide that recreation element that is identified as a real high need by the community. We also have unpaved nature hiking trails, destination playground, and smaller playgrounds. So we may have, in this case, multiple playgrounds identified across the site given the distance between the parcels and the size of the parcels as well. We also have picnic shelters, both large and small. We have multi-purpose fields, splash pad, covered basketball courts, pickleball courts, tennis courts, and dog park round out the first column. We, of course, as you'll see in the top of the second column, restrooms, identified again as very high need, as well as exercise stations or a fitness court, baseball fields, and potential softball fields associated with that. Disc golf course, a skate park, beach volleyball courts, baseball and softball, and then also open lawn space, fishing pier, Wi-Fi and food truck area, and kayak launch. And so we'll see there in the last couple there with fishing pier and kayak launch, those represent potentials to activate a lake that's located in parcel A. That could be an amenity component there as well. Let's talk a little bit about parcel B now. So this is the smallest of the three, just around about 15 acres in size overall. And so this one, again, is identified to be part of the overall park. It could be really a facility-oriented parcel. And so this really could serve some of the larger opportunities for facilities within the park, and that could include potential library and an aquatics facility. And this is a great opportunity to really find an opportunity to share some of the infrastructure that these facilities would need, such as parking and other utilities. Now, just below that, you'll see a list of some additional amenities that may be developed across one of the three parcels. And these are still opportunities that we're working out where exactly that might be best suited. And these could include a potential community fitness or recreation center, a county school bus loop or bus drop-off pickup area, and then finally, again, shared parking lots or other support facilities. So this is, again, really finding a way that we can eliminate a redundancy of some of the infrastructure or parking and really share and find efficiency with some of these items. So again, as we work out those pieces across this, those additional elements may be located again in parcels A, B, or C at this time.
Thanks, Nick. So that's kind of a good summary of where we are on the programming for the site. We wanted to hand it over now to Heath with the Public Works presentation.
Were we able to get Heath on? No, some of us have been having a little bit of technical difficulty with the Zoom tonight, so no, Heath wasn't able to join us on the virtual Zoom, so Brad's going to give us a little overview of some of the items that will be our improvements that are coming to the area currently.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Again, my name is Brad Keene. I'm the Assistant Director for the Parks and Recreation Department. I am not an engineer or a transportation expert, but I've sat in enough meetings to know that our city staff in Public Works is very aware of the needs and challenges that building a park of this size will have to the area of Torino in the north end of the city. So what I can share with you, and you can see it on the screen, is that the Public Works Department, their engineering division, they have projected some roadway improvements that are in place or that are in the process of moving forward right now. Those include some improvements at the Midway Road East Torino intersection to add some turn lanes to help facilitate the traffic there. They are currently in the process of opening. I think the bid has closed. They're going to evaluate a recent bid to construct a roundabout at the intersection of North Torino and East Torino. That went out previously to a bid, and unfortunately it came in well over budget, but they've refined the bid and they've re-advertised it, and I think it has closed again. So they're in the process of vetting and reviewing that bid proposal as we speak. And then there's some proposed improvements that will come about in the Torino area, and those you can see down at in the lower end. Where some existing roundabouts already exist on Torino, and to make some other roadway improvements. Now, that's not to say that
I was
Heath is.
going to let you know that Heath is on if you wanted to.
I will gladly turn it over to Heath and let him take it from there. Thank you.
So Heath, Brad had began, I know you said you had just joined, and he was kind of going over a few of the improvements that we are looking forward to in the Torino area. So if you want to maybe recap what he just said and add anything maybe that we have missed. Is he here? Okay. In the meantime, I will just reiterate that if you have any questions that you would like to ask the panel, or as I said, Heath is working on joining us via public, virtually for some of the public works questions or the roadway traffic questions. Please write those in our Q&A box, and we'll be happy to answer them for you. I have noticed a couple of comments, and I think they have been answered, but I want via the keyboard, but I wanted to just put it out that if this looks a little blurry to the viewing public, please know that we will put this recording on our landing page for the project. Again, that's cityofpsl.com/Torino Regional Park. I'll also put a document that actually just captures the presentation just in and of itself, so that you can look through that if you prefer to not, if you don't want to listen to the entire presentation and you just want to hit the high points in the PowerPoint that we're showing tonight.
Kelly, can you hear me now?
Yes. Hi, Heath.
Hello. Sorry about that. I had some extreme technical difficulties earlier, but it seems like we've got them worked out for now. I understand Brad was sharing some information. I don't know what he shared and what he didn't, so I'll just kind of take it from the top. If I repeat, my apologies. I'd rather cover it than leave something out. So the image to the right shows both existing and planned improvements to the Torino area. Anyone that lives over there, I'm sure, is aware of the improvements that were completed a couple of years ago at Kashmir and Torino, and California and Torino. Two new roundabouts went in there to improve those intersections. Also, some sidewalks have gone in along the West Torino corridor, as well as the East Torino corridor east of California. And there are plans to continue those sidewalks and trails, as you can see depicted on the left, proposed sidewalk on Volusia up to Blanton, the Blanton Loop, and then potentially a sidewalk through the park. So some planned improvements that we're trying to get underway prior to now, but we got a little setback due to construction costs. We had to rebid the project. It was rebid, and the project was open. Bid openings were earlier this week. However, the project for that is a new roundabout at North Torino and East Torino. There's currently a three-way stop at that location that will be replaced with a new single-lane roundabout, pedestrian crossings, and so forth. There are also going to be turn lane improvements for northbound Torino at Midway Road. Should greatly improve that intersection in the morning peak times. I understand there's a lot of congestion at that location. It's also going to be a proposed pedestrian crossing just south of Delwood. That'll allow access from the multifamily on the west side of the road over to the east side to allow them into Winter Lakes Park. So in addition, the council is in discussions of a bond referendum that would pay for some additional roadway improvements. They're not solely located in the Torino area, but the East Torino corridor would be one of the corridors identified for additional improvements. So we don't exactly know what those improvements are going to be, and I hate to speculate. However, we should know a little more clearly in the coming months if we do move forward with bond referendum and if or what those improvements will be to East Torino. But at the very least, there'll be some additional intersection improvements. And lastly, I think I'll add that as the Parks and Rec team develops the park project itself, their consultant is going to be evaluating the impacts to traffic and offering recommendations to offset some of those impacts, whether it be through widening, pedestrian connectivity, intersection improvements, or the multimodal options. So we'll address those as they come. But I think that's it for me, Kelly.
Okay, thanks so much, Heath. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, so it looks like we're ready to move on to the Q&A section, and there's already a few in the chat. So I will start with, we have a question about what is a pump track? So a pump track is actually just a small, track that has some of the moguls and whatnot that, kids or adults can kind of practice with their BMX bikes on, or you could put any other roller, type, roller blades, roller skates, if permitted. I will say that, in the preliminary discussions of this particular project, we don't necessarily intend to have a pump track. We did have if any of the viewing audience recalls, we did have a adventure park project some years ago that there was some conceptual plans for a BMX track, pump tracks, skate parks, and things of those nature. With the reallocation of those funds, we the Parks and Recreation Department were directed to bring those amenities to some of our regional parks that we're looking to bring online. So a BMX element is now anticipated and envisioned for the Tradition Regional Park site. And then we are looking to bring a skate park element to the Torino Regional Park site. So we're trying to get those amenities within the city that have been long requested and asked for in some of the different areas of the city. So that's what what a pump track is. I hope that answered that question thoroughly. I'm not a pump track expert by any means, but I've been, actually the Adventure Park project was something I worked on for the time that it was moving forward, and so I did learn a few things, and I think it's going to be a really great amenity out at the Tradition Regional Park site. We have a comment about, police on the site. I will say that, while there's not a plan to put an annex on our Torino Regional Park site, we do have a group of wonderful Parks and Recreation officers who frequent our parks and are called regularly, for any situations that may require their services. And they're very quick to respond and to help any of our patrons or workers out that are in the park. So I know security is a big concern for everyone. And so we definitely try to address that, in any way we can. So our next question is, are there any changes envisioned for the existing RC flying field? So for those of you that may not be aware, currently the RC Hobby Group is currently occupying a portion of the Torino Regional Park site and have been for some years now. We have been looking at, what would be the best fit for any new amenities on the site. And while there is, we don't have any finalized plans to provide tonight on any renderings and we haven't been given direction by council or city management on any movement forward on changing anything. If the recommendation becomes that we would develop that site, we would do what we could to accommodate and see if there was a place that we could put that group within the city. But no plans have been made. So, and if that area is to be developed as another amenity in the future. Again, it may be years out. It just depends on what the phasing recommendation would be. And on that note, because I know Brad has a little more knowledge of that piece particularly, I'll ask, do you have anything you want to add, Brad?
Well, thank you, Kelly. Yeah, the RC Hobby Group, they've been on that property under a lease for, I think, about 7 years now. They're an excellent group to work with. They do provide a recreational outlet. It is the Parks and Recreation Department's desire to offer a very diverse recreational programs and opportunities throughout the city. And this type of activity does certainly meet a need for a portion of our community. So we will do what we need to do to not only plan and provide for the recreational elements of Torino Regional Park, but we will also do whatever we can to relocate or either, if it's possible, in the Torino Park area itself or on another property to be able to, so that the RC group can have a home. So we're not looking to kick them out or kick them to the curb, so to speak, but we do want to work with them and find a place for them to continue their activities.
Thanks, Brad. Our next question, I believe, maybe for Heath, if you can answer this one for us. What's the broken green line on the transportation improvements screen mean?
The green and red line are future sidewalk or trail improvements.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And then the next question, Heath, again, maybe something you can answer. It says, are you adding a second lane in both directions for the added traffic?
At this point, we don't anticipate widening the full section of roadway and evaluating existing traffic patterns. The worst area as far as level of service congestion is from North Torino to Midway. And based upon limited funding, if we were to widen the section, it would be that section while doing intersection improvements to the remainder of the corridor. We did, just for reference, we did price out widening the full thing from the Cashmere roundabout to Midway, and it came in at about $55 million. The full bond issuance that I referenced earlier is about $54 million. So there's no way we could even get this one project done with that bond. So it's unlikely that'll be done without some grant funding or some DOT contribution.
Okay, thanks. And it says, what improvements can be made to the waterways surrounding the Torino Park parcels?
As far as the canals go?
I'm going to assume probably the canals, maybe the lake up at the top. And if I'm not.
We are looking at the lake on the north side of Parcel A as a potential recreation amenity, and there may be some modifications to the stormwater facility that's on the south side of the canal, but I don't think that one is suitable for recreation. It is best used to keep it as a stormwater facility that probably helps that drainage basin in that area of town. As far as the canal goes, we really probably don't have any recreational opportunities for the canal itself. So that canal, unfortunately, it kind of blocks the connectivity between the north and the south, but we are looking at opportunities to get at least pedestrians across that canal with a pedestrian bridge. So that is something we are looking at with the design.
Great, thanks. Heath, you're up again, I think. Will speed bumps be installed on Blanton and Volusia? Cars and even school buses fly down these streets already, and we don't even have the park yet. So some concern about speed, I guess, in that area.
Yeah, well, right now there's no plan for any of those improvements. However, I would encourage Parks and Rec team with their traffic consultant to evaluate potential safety improvements along there. If there's going to be crosswalks, you can do raised crosswalks that serve as speed tables. You can do a raised intersection at Blanton, Volusia, things like that to reduce the speeding issues. But I would incorporate that into the overall project of the park if that were to come to fruition. However, traffic studies and so forth need to be done before really crossing that bridge. As far as Volusia, since Volusia is technically a local street, that could fall under the city's traffic calming policy, and that's resident initiated. So, anyone that lives along Volusia that would like to have the city evaluate that for potential traffic calming, would be happy to look at it. For running the record, the site is www.cityofpsl.com /traffic calming. Very simple, and walks you through, gives you the overview of the program, has the application, petition, everything right there for your use.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so the next question is, in the restrooms, are you having family restrooms? Are you also going to have, besides baby changing tables, adult changing tables, as we have a high adult special needs community? And that's a very good point and a very good comment. And it's not something that we're not to that point yet of really getting into the architecture and the specifics of the buildings just yet, as these are all conceptual designs. And trying to figure out what the best fit and the most needed amenities are for the site. But that's definitely something that we'll keep in mind as we move forward through the process of building a phase one of the park. Thank you for that. I think we already answered that one, so I'm gonna answer that. Sorry, I'm catching up, and there's some redundancy in the questions, so I'm just kind of going through. So then we have, how will sandhill cranes and other wildlife be protected and thrive within these proposed changes and increase in traffic and people to this area? There is a large population of sandhill cranes in this area, and they nest here as well. So noticing that with a lot of the high-ranking amenities were more passive recreation. We are, very cognizant of that there is some conservation areas that we want to maintain within this particular site, particularly on the northeast corner, I'd say. And we also have some wetlands on the southeast corner that we have to be cognizant of. So, every efforts will be made, and of course, by the letter of the law, will we make sure that we are protecting the areas that are within the park space. So that we cannot, we can't go into wetlands and just construct. I mean, those things have to be, mitigated. And if you're going to construct in any wetland area, and we have not made any proposal to do so on this site, we would have to make sure we mitigate that so that we have an adequate amount of preserved space elsewhere. So, anything to add to that piece?
No, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. We are planning on a good portion of the site to be preserved and used as walking trails and pathways, and I think people will get a good chance to see some of those sandhill cranes.
Yeah, for sure. They're great too. I love a sandhill crane. Okay, so Heath, I think this one may be for you as well. At the city 3-day workshop, the commissioner said they would have a bond to 2-lane East Torino Parkway prior to the park opening. Is that still the plan?
So that's the bond referendum I was referring to earlier. The council directed us to make improvements to several roadways. It wasn't just East Torino. Again, it's East Torino, South Bend, St. Lucie West, and Bay Shore were the roads that they identified us to provide improvements. And so again, with the limit of the bond, about $54 million, we're not going to be able to widen all of East Torino. Again, the widening of East Torino alone is $55 million. So we're going to spread that bond around and make improvements to those other areas as well. But, at the very least, a quarter of that money will go to Torino to ensure that the improvements that are necessary will be made to accommodate the park.
Thanks. The next question, how much of the parcel's forests are going to be cleared? I would say we're in the very preliminary conceptual design process right now, so no determination has been made in any final detail about what areas may be constructed or developed outside of that. We right now don't anticipate going into, wetlands necessarily or the conservation area with the exception of passive recreation amenities. Other than that, nothing has been finalized. I would go on to say that the next question is again about the remote controlled field. Again, no plans have been finalized. We are, making the best efforts to make sure that we are bringing amenities to the city that our residents are wanting and are much needed. And so, and in those conversations, we are discussing fairly frequently the ideas of, the remote control group that is currently occupying the site, and what we anticipate may need to happen if any development goes on that particular parcel. But no, again, preliminary concepts, nothing has been finalized to date. And the next question is, will all 3 parcels be developed at the same time? So right now, we have a budget of about $20.5 million for a phase 1. That is consistent. That consists of a $10 million bond, $5.5 million of what we call ARPA funding. That's the American Recovery Funds that came down from the government post-COVID to help communities. And then we also have $4 million of county funding that through the interlocal agreement for park amenities in general. And then we have a $1 million that is for softball specific amenities that we anticipate bringing to this site. So to answer that, things, cost are rising, and there are a lot of amenities that are needed and have been requested for the site. So in all likelihood, we won't be able to construct all of them, or all 3 parcels at once. We'll have to phase this out as we do many of our other projects. So we will, when we bring a final plan to our city council in the coming months, we would bring a phasing recommendation of what that phase 1 would look like and what we think we would be able to construct for those dollars. Did the city acquire the western property, a parcel A that was owned by someone that was looking to develop that into apartments? So it has not officially been acquired. The conversation is ongoing. City council did, the GFC board recently did approve the moving forward with that specific item. We do have several months or maybe even 6 months to a year of going through that process before it will be finalized, and if everything goes through well, we are hopeful that we will be able to acquire that additional 28 acres, and that is on the southeast corner of the site there that you see on the screen. That looks like a fish. We lovingly call that the fish. Oh, I think I answered that. So we have a request that apparently there's and I wasn't aware of this meeting, but there is a meeting for the Volusia Speed Table, January 24th. Heath, can you confirm that?
Diane knows more than I do. I'm sorry. So I would trust her if that's what she says, and I would believe that. I can confirm later, but if that's what they were told, then that's the date.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone's interested in that meeting, be on the lookout. I'm sure our communications team, as great as they are, will be advertising it just prior with any information you may need if you wish to attend. Are there going to be facilities for community events during holidays and special occasions? That's a very good question, because I do know that, as a city, we maybe lack event space, and I know that's something that we do consider with each of these larger projects. So that I don't know that we've actually discussed that in great detail for this site, but that's something that we can take a look at. And it is up in the northern quadrant of the city, so we would have to kind of weigh the logistics of folks going up that way for these events that I think right now a lot of them, they're used to going to our Mid-Florida Event Center or something like that. But we're a growing city, and we definitely need those additional event spaces. So something to consider for sure. Thank you. Okay, Heath, and this is a public, yeah. What about the intersection of Blanton and Coosa? There is no outlet going into Coosa, and we are concerned about excess traffic in that small part of our community, people driving in and out.
I assume the intent is that the excess traffic on Blanton would not allow people to get in and out of Coosa. If that's the case, we'll certainly evaluate it. We have federal standards that we follow regarding placement of stop signs and so forth, and intersection improvements that become, so if that becomes an issue, we'll definitely continue to monitor it, and then if appropriate, either, stop signs or, roundabouts or any other kind of appropriate treatments that would, allow the residents to maintain their access.
And then the question again is, will Public Works be notifying Volusia of the January 24th date? I mean, Heath, if you want to expand on this, feel free, but I know that for any of our public meetings, we put the word out in every outlet possible that we have at our disposal, be it social media, or, the TV 20, or on the webpage, on the calendar. If anyone wants to go and look at that calendar, you'll see all the events and meetings and anything else that you might be interested in with the city on the city's website. So I am sure it will be advertised in great detail.
It will, and typically for meetings like that, we install what we call variable message boards, which are the large electronic boards that change messages to alert the residents to the location and time of the meeting. So it will it won't be for lack of trying to get the message out, but
Right.
We encourage people to notify their neighbors as well.
Great.
And I see your question about no outlet sign. Certainly, that's a great suggestion. We can do that regardless of the park.
Awesome. Okay. Well, right now, we don't have any open questions. I think we answered everything. Okay. Did I miss it? Oh, okay. Sorry, yeah, when we had our technical difficulties earlier, Avi screenshotted a few of the questions for me because I couldn't get them through the Zoom meeting. It may have been addressed through some of the Public Works update about the roundabouts that are coming, but the question is, Heath, in case it wasn't, is excited to see the plan. Will there be, I'm sorry, it's very small on my screen, will there be road widening and/or roundabouts put in near the park? Is there a plan for more efficient exit from Torino, north to Midway, and the one route from Torino to Midway is still often congested already? Thanks.
Yeah, that was covered, but I'll reiterate that right now, and we'll be under construction within a month probably, is a roundabout at North Torino and East Torino, as well as intersection improvements for northbound Torino at Midway. Then moving forward in the next couple of years, under the bond referendum, assuming that moves forward, there'll be additional improvements to East Torino, up to and including widening portions to 4 lanes, but most definitely including other intersection improvements such as Blanton and other high volume intersections.
And then there's a question that says, will there be a way to get onto Torino that avoids the roundabouts?
No.
No. I live on Cotton Drive and would like to know if Northwest Torino will get sidewalks.
What was the area?
Cotton Drive?
Was
Oh, sorry. If Northwest Torino.
Yeah, so if you'll notice in both graphics show the proposed sidewalk on West Torino and North Torino. So yes, there will be a sidewalk all the way around the loop.
Great. All right.
This thing.
Okay. All right. Well, we don't really have any open questions right now. I will reiterate once again that if you want to go back and view the presentation, we will upload the recording on the landing page. www.cityofpsl.com/Torino Regional Park. We'll also put a copy of the presentation just by itself, because I know sometimes you just want to go and look at some of the high points of the presentation. And this will probably take about a week and a half, I'm being told by the Zoom extraordinaire that does these wonderful things for us. And then the QR code, if you actually are looking at the screen now and you want to just pop your camera on that QR code, it'll take you straight to that website. So if you find that helpful. All right. Well, Jonathan, did you have anything you wanted to say as we wrap up? I don't
Good.
see
Thanks
any-
everyone for participating. Some
All
good
right.
questions.
Yeah, definitely. We appreciate everyone's participation tonight. I will say that we are going to be, going through this data that Nick and Jonathan were able to provide us tonight. We're going to make some decisions on some of the amenities that will be good fits for this park. And we hope to bring it back to our wonderful residents who come and help us out with these projects at a time. We're looking at right now mid-November, if all goes well, but just like you were able to look and access this meeting date, you will be able to, if you keep an eye on that website, we will definitely post it, a few weeks out from getting that going. I think that one's going to be in person. So again, if you prefer an in-person venue, this will definitely be the meeting for you. And then after that, we hope to take it to our city council, like I say, with that phasing recommendation that will actually let us, direct us with what amenities we will be constructing for a phase one. If approved, we would like to put it out for bid for construction early next year in hopes that it'll have to go into construction plans, of course, and then break ground maybe late 2024 or early 25. So with that, I see that there are still no questions, so we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all at future planning meetings. Thanks so much.